Did you know some people live with HIV for years without showing any symptoms? It's National HIV Testing Week, a perfect time to have a test. If you have HIV, finding out means you can start treatment and stay healthy. Test negative, you get peace of mind. Testing is easy, free, and confidential. You can even test at home. Give HIV the finger. A finger prick test is all it takes. Get a free test at freetesting.hiv. Did you know?
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, and apologies for those who are trying to watch the video broadcast. Thank you to those who are listening online. We're still online, obviously, www.pamtengo.com or on the TuneIn app. Just go to TuneIn /Pamtengo Radio. We're now on the video feed, and we're going to continue the conversation with Marshall and Marshall, the CEO of Team Zimbabwe, Kelvin Sfilani, and Ngoni, who's on the line right now. And then, so we were talking just before the break, Mr. Marshall, you're going on about the academies, what Ngoni has alluded to. Please, if you can continue.
Yeah, I think also appreciate Ngoni's contribution to the show, but what I wanted to do was to just shed more light that it's not the FA's responsibility to run academies. The responsibility of the FA is to regulate academies. The responsibility of the FA is to create safeguards to ensure that when people are running the academies, they are checked properly and vetted so that there's no abuse happening. If you look at the example of here in England, football is actually run by the private sector. It's a private entity. Most of these clubs are private or community clubs. The Premier League is a private enterprise entirely, with the capital from abroad and coming from all different angles. So this notion of thinking that academies should be created by governments or academies should be created by football associations, it's wrong. Football is a social enterprise and a private enterprise. So if you look, for example, in Zimbabwe right now, there are a lot of football academies in the last 10 years, like I said, from 2010 to 2020 now, there are a lot of football academies. I think we've had huge lot of, when I was talking, the last time I was talking to ZIFA official who's responsible, it's actually a huge dilemma. We have so many academies. I think everywhere you go, there's so many academies. But what is important is to ensure that those academies are well regulated, and also there's a framework of players moving within the pathway. Because it's not good to have an academy in Chipinge where there are 10 or 5 brilliant football players playing. How do we get them from Chipinge now into the Premier League? Which seems to be the problem. And actually here at Team Zimbabwe UK, we are normally contacted by a lot of these people that are playing football in an area where there's no local club at all. And the local football teams in Zimbabwe should extend their scouting to all parts of the country so that they can harness this talent. So yes, Ngoni is right. We must develop our own local academies, but I can tell you that there is a huge influx of academy in Zimbabwe. Now, what I actually think is needed now is the regulation and to create a pathway of ensuring that when players are progressing, they are given opportunities to progress very well.
Well, I don't know if I can just rewind back something that Marshall was talking about the state of football in the late 1980s and through the early 1990s, that basically the welfare of footballers was somewhat looked after by their teams or their sponsors. I think it's quite important that we mention sponsorship, seeing as we're essentially discussing how football is funded, how it's resourced. If you will recall, in the past, various football teams that have met with a measure of success in Zimbabwe, the likes of Caps United. Obviously, Caps United, the company Caps Holdings had some sort of input into Caps United, the football team. If you look at teams like Zisco Steel it was very much the same thing. This is why Zisko Steele was able to bring up or nurture the talent and skills of players like I'm trying to think offhand, Ofram Zimbiri, Nobet Zimuto, that sort of thing, those sort of players. Then you had what I'd like to call football upstarts, teams where you didn't imagine that they would do well at the highest level of Zimbabwean football. Teams like Lancashire Steel. Then you had teams like Tanganda. You had teams like Hippo Valley. All of these teams looked after their players. Do you know that a lot of footballers would leave Harare and say go and live in Chirezi because Hippo Valley Estates would offer them a job, offer them a livelihood. And on the weekend, they're playing for that team. We don't have that culture anymore. At least it's not as prominent as it used to be back then. But I believe, I'm of the conviction, had we followed the kind of resourcing football in the various parts of the country, we would be in better stead than we are currently. Because all it is right now is we're hoping that some players are exported to either South Africa, United Kingdom, and then bring back their skill set to Zimbabwe to play in the national team.
That's when Goni comes in. That's when
there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that approach.
Is it sustainable?
What I'm saying is you need a multi-dimensional approach to the development of the game. No, we can't say that this is a better option than the other. What I believe is that all options should be on the table. Those that cross the border to go and develop their skills and their talent in South Africa. Those that go abroad, go play perhaps in the EPL or other European teams, and fine.
Okay.
You see, like for instance, Brazil, they have a different way of looking at things. They will say, okay, we have some players who are applying their trade in the Premiership in the UK or in Spain or Italy, but that's not the end all of our talent pool. We have teams that are playing, footballers that are playing for Palmeiras, are playing for Cruzeiro, and those can make it into the national team. So this is, you know, we need to broaden the way that we try and resource football and footballers, and indeed how we harvest
the talent pool.
The talent pool. Whether the person is playing out in Mutaya for
Tanganda
or whatever, that is the approach.
But
Because ultimately what happens is those people that scout the footballers have a determined and a deliberate approach to scouting for footballers. They will find the N'Golo Kantes. They will find, if I'm to be honest, the kind of footballers that have come out of Zimbabwe in the past could have played at any level in the world today. If I look back and I think of the likes of Hamid Dana, if I look at the likes of the dribbling skills of Mike Abrahams, the ball distribution of Achford Chimtanda, all of those, or goalkeepers in Jaffet Mparuta. He's the only goalkeeper that I can remember who did not necessarily punch the ball to make a clearance. He'd actually catch it, and that's why they called him the short cat. And I can't, in all the football that I've watched and covered, both locally and international, I can't remember seeing a goalkeeper that was that prolific in catching the ball, you know. And it's just unfortunate that he was never able to apply his trade abroad so that people could tell just how good they are. A lot of people believe that just because you're Zimbabwean, you can't play at the very highest level. We need to change that mindset as well. Because I've seen, as far as I'm concerned, in my coverage of football both on the continent and at the World Cup. I have seen players out of Africa that are just absolutely off the scale, you know. But the way we see ourselves, we don't see ourselves or don't see our players as being that good, and that mindset has got to change, I believe.
I get that, and I get, obviously we've lost one because of connection. It's just,
can I come in?
It's just
okay,
come in. Sorry, hold on. Tinashe, are you there? Okay, we've got another caller. Go on, Masha, and then we'll get to the caller.
Yeah, Sam, I think what I wanted to say is that we are missing the plot here by saying having football academies will make us triumph at international tournaments. That's not the case, you know. So my case is that the issue in Zimbabwe is not necessarily that we don't have football academies. And I want to correct one notion which people confuse. I think what used to happen in Zimbabwe is that a lot of the Premier League clubs used to have junior teams like under 12, under 8, from under 8, and think going upwards. Yeah. But what is happening now, because of the financial constraints and the economic issues that happened in Zimbabwe in the last 20 years, a lot of the companies which Kelvin mentioned that were sponsoring football, Zisco Steel is no longer there as a company or as an entity, you know. So that means Zisco Steel Football Club is not there. This is change. Change is dynamic. You know, Dynamos and Cape United cannot afford to run junior football teams because they're actually failing to run their first teams alone, the budget, due to lack of sponsorship related to economic hardships and related to the shift and the dynamics in the corporate world. What is the dynamic in the What are the dynamics in the corporate world? The dynamics in the corporate world is that there are new companies that are into play now. The companies that were big, the Cape United holdings that were big 30 years ago are no longer big now. There are new players that have come, so the clubs need to be dynamic. But anyway, let me go back. What I want to tell people is that in Zimbabwe, in the last 10, 12 years, we have had a lot of academies, more than we had before. We have a lot of... Let me finish them. Let me finish them. If you actually go in Zimbabwe and you drive, you will see a lot of these academies, you know. So for me, the problem is not having academies. The problem is having a system and a structure. The problem is about invest. If you want our local leagues to do well, we need to invest in the local leagues. And sometimes my heart pains me a lot as well, that the same people that curse local football don't support local football. You can see I'm wearing a Highlanders jersey. Yeah. Why? I support Cape United. I bought this jersey so that Highlanders Football Club can be sustained, you know. So the other issue as well, Sam, is that football in Zimbabwe is in a state, not necessarily because Zifa cannot run football, because people don't go to stadiums. They watch English football on TV, on Sky, on satellite, and don't go into the local stadiums. If you don't go to my stadium, there are no
stadiums. Where stadiums are we going to when there are no stadiums?
No. We've got PSL. We've got games are being played with PSL. Our stadiums are not in the good shape, but you've got PSL. The football. When I went to Zimbabwe, I attend games. I go there and I watch games. The crowds are very low. You know, Cape United play at the National Sports Stadium. Dynamos play at Rufaro. The crowds are. Islanders play at Baba Fields. You know, Ngezi Platinum, they've got their own stadium. Platinum Yama Pesa, they've got their own stadium. Very good stadium, actually, if we can say. And this is the other development as well, Kelvin, that people are not appreciating. That the mining team.
If we were asked to host the Africa Cup, a tournament right now in Africa, even just a Southern African tournament, that one, are we able to host them with those stadiums? We can't. Because they not even meet the CAF criteria, let alone the FIFA criteria.
Same. Let me get to the bottom right. I've just given you a saying that the anointing you respect is the anointing you respect. We have not invested in football infrastructure. Why? Because government didn't have the money. The private sector didn't have the money. This is number one. South Africa has got good football infrastructure because they could attract investment for major tournaments. So we need to look at ourselves as well. I'm saying this because I know people are very quick to blame government. Yes, which we do, because they are also part and parcel of the problem. It's not a problem. But I want to, so people need to respect local football, Sam. When you go to Zimbabwe, people don't respect local football. They go to the sports club near the president's house. What's the name of that sports club? Harare Sports Club, yeah, in dozens to watch English Premier League. When Dynamos is playing at Rufaro, they don't go there.
It's more attractive. Why can't we make our local leagues more attractive?
But that's what I've just been telling you now, that we are also part and parcel of the problem. Because until we fill Rufaro Stadium for Dynamos to have money to buy players and to improve their capacity, we are not helping them by abstaining from going to football stadium. Unfortunately, if we don't support those local teams, they will go under. And they will. And people also say, this idea of people also putting a lot of emphasis on EPL and not supporting local clubs is dangerous, I can tell you. You can have fantastic academies, so as long as you don't go to football. Here, if people stop going to stadiums, even football is on TV, but the stadiums are full, that's what makes those clubs strive. This is why you guys in Africa want to watch the EPL, because there are people in the stadium. If those guys that go in the stadium don't go to the stadium and the EPL is played in an empty stadium, their viewings abroad will go down. So this is what so what I'm saying is that the football community in Zimbabwe should also make an effort to support their local teams. By not supporting them, you're adding insult to injury.
When you were covering football back home at that time, I even remember as a kid going to stadiums, Rufaro, Gwanzura, National Sports Stadium, and it would be full. And it was actually exciting and stuff like that. And so you mentioned, obviously, private sectors sponsoring the Caps Holdings and them. At this stage right now, so we've obviously moved, and Masha, we've obviously moved to the topic about Zimbabwean football now and the national team as well.
That's
and then how going forward, what can we do to make the Zimbabwe national team maybe do better next time? And I think maybe this also comes into play as well, the development of the local league. But the situation, how it was at that time and how it is right now, do you think right now we can go back to the same? There's no way we can do this.
You know what? It boils down to a number of things. Number one is the administration of the game of football. Do we have the right people administering and running football? Zimbabwe has, in the past, have had football administrators of note, people going way back to the days of John Madzima. These were people that had the game of football in heart, and of course, there was a return in taking part in football administration. You could earn a living from it, and also the other thing is that in terms of marketing, there are so many different things that need to happen for the game of football to thrive in Zimbabwe. Like, for instance, in terms of marketing, I remember a time when if Highlanders was going to play Dynamos either at Barberfield Stadium or at Rufaro Stadium or at the National Sports Stadium, people would have never had the time to go and watch Liverpool playing Manchester United. They wouldn't have been interested.
I agree. And so something happened along the way then, right?
No, some people recognize the fact that marketing works. It's just like the Premiership. A lot of people will tell you time and time again that the Premiership is where the best football in the world is played. It's the best league in the world. Who says? People have been told that time and time again that is the situation. It's not necessarily true. But the amount of money invested in marketing the Premiership surpasses any other league, and this is why the Chinese have recognized this, and they've decided, you know what, we are going to start making inroads. We're going to into the Premiership. We're going to try and build an institution or a fraternity that can compete with the Premiership. And this is why they're paying vast amounts of money to play in China. You'll find that the German administration has been a little bit slow themselves. They've recognized that, you know what, the Premiership, the English Premiership is basically running away with it, and we've been lagging behind because there were, but what they've managed to do is to hold the interests of the German people with German football. Yes, they might recognize that there's a matter of a game between Liverpool and Manchester United, but I tell you what, to them, what's bigger is Dortmund playing Bayern.
Yes, yeah,
or Leipzig playing Leverkusen.
But then they're local
So
leagues.
This is what I'm saying. This is why a lot of it is down to administration and down to marketing. Do you know, I had the good fortune of being able to, the company that I represented, which was Hyundai Motor Distributors, I decided, you know what, I am going to go with Dynamos. And the return that we got from that marketing campaign in terms of sales, in terms of profile, in terms of soft power with our customers, I had the strength to basically be able to approach somebody if I wanted to sell my product, because they warmed to me because one of my association with Dembare, with my association with the national team, and all of that kind of.
That was more marketing, though. Right? Marketing, PR, and that. But then, are we supposed to be looking to that for Zimbabwean football?
It's all of those things.
To go forward right now.
It's the administration, it's the PR, it's the marketing, and all of that will ultimately breed success, and it will spill over into the national team.
Tinashe, are you there? I've got a call on the line. Tinashe, are you there?
Hello, Sam.
Before I get to you, Tinashe, let me just read a message here. Frank says, I agree with everyone, and I just want to suggest youth academies in communities. Give the communities sports education and recreational sports teams. This is important for the youth globally for Zimbabwe. If you only think of the impact of the national team, then we leave behind thousands of participants and those that can challenge to join the national team, from grassroots to national team. Thank you, Frank, which I think was the point that Ngoni was trying to make, that this is short-sighted to just look at players coming to Europe. I think maybe that if I'm not putting words in his mouth, that's what he was alluding to. Tinashe, you're there. Talking of this, this whole thing of grassroots football as well, but then also how it helps Zimbabwean football going forward. Look at, for example, the smaller teams, Malawi, Comoros, Burkina Faso, the small teams that have done well at AFCON. What did they have in common when they went to the AFCON? It was like all of them had players that played in Europe. Most of all the players were playing in their respective countries. So anyway, Tinashe, your thoughts on this?
My thoughts, like what Frank said, everyone is right, but I would mainly follow Kel's train of thought, because I believe money follows money.
Money follows money.
Yeah. So companies, they just don't go into football, what do you call this? Into the football industry and just say we're just going just for the sake of sponsoring football. So, but this issue is an issue that we can have the whole day discussing about it. But this is my own personal view. For sports to improve in Zimbabwe, I won't focus on other countries. I'll talk about Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, it has to start. There has to be a shift of mindset from parents. You know, like I remember growing up, I used to play football. My parents always discouraged me to play football. Football, you get injured. Football doesn't have money. If you injure yourself, there's no. So charity begins at home. The moment everyone realizes that football is a business, everything will change. How many countries in Africa have you seen? Like we're watching the AFCON. Do you have any country that said we've got a schoolboy who's playing for this national team? No country. Ever.
Not,
But if you come
not
to,
that I've seen, yes. Not that I've seen,
but
yes.
if you come to Europe, you have 18-year-olds playing, 17-year-olds playing. So there is a shift in mind, a shift that needs to happen, so that we embrace change. That in arts and sports there is money, because if you look at it, football is now it's a big industry. Just imagine, like in this country, how many, if you ask any kid who their role models are, you find the big guys, Lukaku, this, that. But when we're growing up, everyone, most of our role models were probably businessmen. I want to be an accountant. I want to be this. I want to be that. You find youngsters saying they want to be musicians. They want to be that, because there's now money in those markets. So in Zim, I think I know a lot of people are talking about academies, this, that. But way back when I was growing up, we used to have leagues.
Yeah, but then
under 12s, under what, and I remember some games, because I used to go and watch football games with my dad, because my dad actually forced me to start supporting football. So we'd get to the stadium probably around 12, and there'll be a lot of games. Youngsters will play, then the Division 1s will play and all. So you know that they'll be entertained with football from around 12 o'clock upwards. But when I went back, I felt like those leagues, I think they're being neglected.
But am I correct in saying almost every team in the league at that time had academies that you could play with, right? But right now, if Marshall,
Yes.
I remember a meeting we had, the Caps United chairman, I think Mr. Farage, if I'm not mistaken, came to the UK, and we had a sit down with football stakeholders in the UK, and you asked him something about why academies are not doing much more. Do you remember his answer?
I remember his answer. I remember his answer was directed to lack of resources, because you were saying that the biggest challenge we have, it's easy to buy players now because they're being produced by the local academies. I think what people are failing to understand, and I hear this from Ngoni and I hear this from Tinashe. I want to make it very clear. This year, 2022, we have more football academies in Zimbabwe than we have ever had. But the difference is that these football academies are owned by former players, private individuals that are running them. Some of them are actually being run excellently, like the Rio Betis Academy, which is run in partnership with Rio Betis Academy, which train at the Harare International School. We have perfect academies. I want to be very clear. We have very good academies. The biggest challenge we have is then that we need to look at our infrastructure, so that we can improve it and upgrade it, so that we can get the funds back into the stadiums if they're spacious and comfortable. Maybe that's what we need. Number two, the biggest threat to our football is the Premier League culture. If you walk in Harare and Bulawayo today, you see more people wearing Premier League regalia than their local teams. That kills local football. That kills local football. So people should get this into their heads. So as long as you don't go to the football stadiums and you don't support your local teams, they'll go under. If people stop going to Old Trafford and they stop buying Manchester United shirts, Manchester United will go under. In Zimbabwe, the football fans that are sentimental here saying we should have more academies. Yes, fine, I agree. But we have more academies now, so what? We have the academies now, so what? So my quest is that we really need to change the culture we have. And Kelvin, I want to be very honest with you. Our generation and your generation, we are pretty much the same generation, was loyal and committed to localized products. We were loyal to our teams. Like I said to you, Stan, before, I follow Chelsea. I remain a Caps United supporter. The biggest threat is that the millennium generation, don't care about local football. There's a culture distortion. There's a culture distortion. Unfortunately, they are the majority of the population. So until we adjust that cultural problem, we can even build nice stadiums and pay our players well, but they will not go to the stadiums. They'll follow RNB and continue to follow the Premier League. So this is the biggest threat to our football. We can have 10,000 football academies. Until we change and we focus local, we are going to have a problem. And this is a real problem that we have. And people are not seeing it, but it's actually a real problem, Sam.
He mentioned, Kelvin mentioned marketing and PR, right? So does it mean that right now there's no marketing of Zimbabwean football? If there's no marketing of Zimbabwe, you can't just blame the younger generation because they don't have access to it. They've got more access to the Premiership. Let me just get Tinashe before I let him go. Tinashe, saw you on the line. Just your last thoughts. So we're talking about obviously Zim football going forward. How can then Zimbabwe do better? And comparing to the other smaller countries, obviously Comoros, Malawi, Burkina Faso, others of that stature. Going forward for you, before I let you go, what can we do Zimbabwe as a national team? Let's forget the infrastructure, the academies and stuff. Right now for the next AFCON tournament.
Okay, Sam. It's just that I've got a lot of things on my mind, but I'll start with one issue that Marshall said about the Egyptian league.
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe the reason why Egypt has won a lot of AFCON cups is because of their league. Because if you look at it, like you were talking about the smaller teams doing quite well at this AFCON. I think it's mainly because it's easier to get players into camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a month of having your players in camp. And these are players that are familiar to each other because they'll be playing a lot of games against each other. They know the strengths and weaknesses of their opponents within their local league. So when they meet up as a national team, it's easy for them to gel. Look at the Senegalese. On the group games, they didn't play well, obviously because they had a few days in camp.
Yes.
Then as the games went on, that's when they started to play well because they were getting more time to train together. And there's another trend that I've now noticed. I know most people are saying, yes, we're sending, exporting our talents to Europe. Now it's now in reverse. If you look at it, those players who would have grown up in the diaspora, when they can make it for the home nations that they're based in, they are now coming back. I saw Lookman. He's now going to be representing Nigeria. So there's that reverse thing. But what I've noticed, AFCON and the EPO, those are and European football, I think they're different. If you look at it, like I remember talking to you, telling you that I think AFCON is an equalizer. Someone who, when they come to Africa, when the defenders are told to main mark, they main marks. They can spend the whole 90 minutes without touching the ball. They're okay with it.
Yeah.
So for me, AFCON is an equalizer. For Zimbabwean football, because I can't talk about the countries, for Zimbabwean football to rise, we need to reset and start afresh. Look at, because what
does that look like for you? Restarting and start afresh.
Okay, I remember my brother was into sports and he was into the junior leagues. He used to play for Dynamos. So I remember when I left Kwekwe and I would come to Harare and I'll go to matches watching my brother training and the games. The schools would have a proper coach who would come and train them. And they will give those students, they will have like sessions on just the players having confidence. Just confidence before they do anything. Confidence, they would make sure that their physical condition was really good. Whereas at our school, we used to have a teacher and you'd say, you can kick the ball the hardest. So you can't be a striker. You have to be a defender. We need someone who can take goal kicks because you can kick the ball furthest. So you see, so I feel in schools, we have to have like these former players who come into schools, then teach these youngsters how to play football. And I also found out that in some teams, like the reserve teams, when I used to go there, I would see the stuff that youngsters this side are taught. Like I'm talking about 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, are the things that are 18-year-olds are being taught. So for sports in Zim to progress, we need to catch them young. Like Ngoni said about rugby. Rugby, you always see that the grassroots rugby is always good. But at a certain point, they then move on to other countries and start representing other countries. Just look at the talents that's there. So in Zimbabwe, it starts with us. And as for marketing, I don't believe that football should be marketed as well. It's just like you've got the matchstick. It's not marketed because if it's good, it's good.
If it,
it's good, it's good.
Yeah.
I remember watching. Yeah. There's a game that was put by which was ZTN on Facebook, and it was live, and it was an exciting game. We watched it, but what I noticed in the comment sections, we had people who were from Ethiopia, people from all over Africa watching the game. And they were asking because we were under lockdown, so there was I think most people had a lot of free time, and they were watching our league, and they were saying, "Oh, who's that guy? Look at that tackle, the way he's tackling. That's good. The referee is in charge. The referee is not being allowed to, he's not being bullied by players. He's got the authority. All those kind of things."
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think we need to sit down with every stakeholders, and the football fraternity must also be able to accept other people who are not from the football fraternity. Because what I've noticed,
that's another contentious issue.
Yeah,
but
they want to keep it as their own thing. Because I remember,
I'm coming to but also because I was going to come to that one with Marshall as well. If you're a coach and someone else is coming to tell you what to do, are you happy with that? Are you going to be? Obviously, you can take it on board, but you're not forced to.
Let me tell you one thing.
1 minute to go. I need to go to a break, so I'll go 1 minute.
There's someone who can come and help you out, because it always pains me when I hear people saying football now needs to be, the head of the ZIFA now needs to be someone who played football. I don't think that you need the best person for the job. It doesn't necessarily matter if you played rugby or not, but if you're good in administration, you're good in administration. That's the end of.
Tinashe, thank you so much for talking to us. I think I need, and you and Frank, because Frank also has a lot to say on Facebook. Frank, thank you so much for all those messages, Frank. I need you to come on to the show next time.
It's just unfortunate that I couldn't hear what Marshall was saying. I would have loved to hear some of his views.
So next time we get you all on the same show together. And of course, there's a lot to unpack. We will never finish this in an hour or two. So but thank you Tinashe for your contribution today. Joe Mtupu once my club eKuZimbabwe ngabhadare ma player man mungabhadare munhu nesadza here. Thank you, Joe, for that message. Also, and then a message that came on here. This is from. Oh, there's no number on this one. It says, you guys keep on going about the old days. Hey, this is what I'm going to say. You keep on going on about the old days. That was long back. Let's talk about now and the future. I thought you guys were saying the future of Zimbabwean football, but everyone who comes on keeps talking about what was happening in the past. Thank you so much. No number. There's no number on this one. Thank you for that message. And that was going to be my thing, Marshall. Before we wrap this up, we've got 15 minutes to go. I want us to just touch on the Cat Zuma issue before we finish, right? In 15 minutes. But Marshall, we keep that's what I was thinking. We keep talking about Kudara Zimbabwe, it was like this, football was like this. But what can we do now? So the question to you, CEO of Team Zimbabwe UK, and other stakeholders in the Zimbabwe football fraternity, what can we do now going forward to help?
Forgive me for
Zimbabwe?
Jumping in,
yeah, of
but
course.
why you have to think about where we were before is you've got to be aware of what things are possible. Like, for instance, Marshall made reference to the fact that the numbers that turn out at stadiums these days is not what it is. Obviously, there are socio-economic considerations to take into account, but it does not take away what is possible. Because I recall a time where on a Sunday, you would know that Gwanzura Stadium is full. At the same time, Rufaro Stadium is full. At the same time, Barberfield Stadium is full. At the same time, Rumuka Stadium is full. And I remember that at one point, because usually it used to be Radio 1 that used to carry commentaries of those football matches, that sometimes we would have on a Sunday afternoon, we'd have a commentator out in Nwanke, a commentator out in Chiredzi, a commentator out in Mutare, and all those stadiums were full. So now this is why we have to refer back to history sometimes so that we remind ourselves of what is possible. If we just say, no, we've got to think about today. How did we get to today? What happened that all those crowds disappeared? We need to track back and look at what went right and what went wrong. This is why we have to refer to history. And one point that Tinashe made a little earlier when he said that money follows money, he's absolutely right. The Premiership today is the richest in the world today simply because Rupert Murdoch poured so much money. He made Sky cover football live, which basically meant that they were able to sell television rights, and they marketed the game of football right down to the bone. So these are the things that we should learn from others. I mean, sometimes to copy other people, there's no harm, there's nothing wrong with learning from other people and or from other institutions, and we can do the same with Zimbabwean football, where we can learn what did the Premiership do right that so many people follow it, what did La Liga do right that so many people would follow it, and we've got to take a leaf out of those books and see what we can do as well, how we can copy them. And remember also, this is the point that I'd like to make, where we came from. And I still maintain that there was a time where, if for argument's sake, Caps United was playing Black Rhinos, or Highlanders was playing Dynamos, or Zimbabwe Saints was playing Highlanders, people would have had no time to go and watch Arsenal play Leeds or whatever. They would have been invested in their local football teams, and that to this day is still possible. But we have to believe, and we have to take the necessary steps to apply ourselves in remodeling, reselling our game, packaging it in such a way that it becomes attractive to people, that they want to watch it. That's basically the approach that I would humbly suggest we have.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I was obviously on the idea of moving forward. We've got a caller who just wants to say his 2 cents. Let's see if he's still there to talk.
Sam.
Hello, boss. How are you?
Boss.
Hey, what did you?
I've just been listening to, I think since 15 minutes ago, and I want to obviously thank you guys in Marshall Gore for the fantastic work he's doing in Zimbabwean football. I think the challenge that we have is our model is very, very wrong. It's all dated, and we need to come up with new approaches. If you look at, for example, the big teams like Black Rhinos, they went under because there wasn't any funding. Same as Mutare, Tanganda. So we need to change the model. If we can look at modern model, for example, for America, like a franchise model, of which team this is no benefiter, rather than just two top teams, then any company sponsoring Black Rhinos, any company sponsoring Tanganda, if they go under, then the whole football team it collapses as well. You know,
boss, someone said earlier on, someone was against this idea of private companies coming. Actually, his point was, if they run out of money, what then happens? This is exactly what you're saying, Am I on
the show?
Yes, you are. You're on the show.
Okay.
Yeah, you're live on air. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're live on air. So
a good example is Tanganda. Tanganda, I went to school in Manicaland. I went to St. Augustine, spent a longer. Tanganda was our local team. But effectively, Tanganda as a business didn't do well. It affected the team. So if we come up with a franchise model where Mari imports, then all teams benefit from that franchise model enough to be protected to survive next season. My other point is regarding maximizing the potential of their football shirts. If you look at my football shirts in Zimbabwe, I think I'm going to one sponsor. But let's maximize it. I know visit Rwanda, for example.
Yes.
Let's maximize it. Let's have several sponsors from our football shirt, so the Dynamos, Caps, all teams are not benefit as much as possible, not just from one sponsor, but from 10, 12, 15 sponsors. Training kits, no sponsor, big kits, no sponsor. I think my other point is around the school football model. Kuchikoro time was the time by Bora second term.
Yes.
If we have to compete, then Bora should be an all-season game.
Yes.
First term, second term, third term. Should not improve in terms of competitiveness. Should not improve in terms of sharpness of players, and also being able to participate in several tournaments across the world.
Yes.
If I can just go back, I don't want to be political, but if you can go back, the rise of Zimdanso, the rise of fantastic artists that we have was partly to do with Jonathan Moyo. I shared out 75% content.
Oh yes.
So if we do the same to TV content, 75. I'm not saying 75%, but a huge percentage allocated to local sports, local football. You need a rise as well in terms of people participation, in terms of converting people participating into stadium visitors, and those stadium visitors vachada kudya national sports, vachada kutenga chikafu, vachada kutenga masikafu, vachada kuenda nememorabilia, jezi reDynamos nejezi reCaps. If you know what I mean.
Yes, that's true, isn't it? Go on. Sorry, go ahead, finish.
Yes, so in terms of my payments to players, the problem that we have is we don't keep our word. My players, I don't after 4 weeks as now kujiga, after 3 weeks as now 2 months as now. It affects the morale, it affects the livelihood around.
But don't you think that's endemic though in our culture? Because even when I was a kid, I used to hear this with my players. I complained that I school.
You know what? Sometimes
that's exactly what I mean, Kuti.
It has to be like a whole culture and a whole attitude, mentality that has to be changed, doesn't it?
Yes, because if we have let's say a franchising model, for example, it's not the responsibility of Tanganda to play away Tanganda. The responsibility will be up to the franchisee football association. Do you know keep a marriage over my clubs? Do you know keep a marriage over my players? My players, they make sure to have bad out. Problem in the equity. Can a football club own football club is chicken in? Chicken in the Katichura and my loss, then play out affect because I'm also taking my chips. Do you get my point?
Yes.
So if we come up with a football model which is 2022 looking beyond as well, we don't have to have my big stages like Gwanzura. So not Gwanzura, even Gwanzura and Rufaro. We can have small community-based stages where people are not just going there just for the football, but for the whole experience. And I think the family or my picture, then they can play some games, then they can have some watch football for 90 minutes from my junior, women's, then the main match. I just think that where we are, we need to realize so we should not copy them. We should look at starting afresh with a new robust model which is going to protect not just football but our football culture in the future. The one last point, I heard Marshall Gore mentioning, if you walk around in Harare, and it's around Chelsea, Man United, and Kelvin even mentioned about money follows money. Is true. So we need to identify Isusu in Zimbabwe. Where is the money? There's nothing wrong with the diaspora. Munwezo Otenga 1% of a football club or 0.5% of a football club. At least you don't go increase all that flow of money and opportunities and exposure to our league and our players. So those are just my 2 cents.
You came at the end of the show. Thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Danai.
Danai, thank you so much. Listen, I want to put this to Marshall and get his 2 cents. We've got 5 minutes to go before the end of the show. But Danai, thank you so much for your 2 cents. Please, I want to get you on the show one of these days if you're available. I'll talk to you off air. But thank you so much for your 2 cents, Marshall. I'll come to you, but before you go, because we've got 5 minutes to go, just a last word from our sponsors, and then I come to you, Marshall, to react to Danai.
Did you know some people live with HIV for years without showing any symptoms? It's National HIV Testing Week, a perfect time to have a test. If you have HIV, finding out means you can start treatment and stay healthy. Test negative, you get peace of mind. Testing is easy, free, and confidential. You can even test at home. Give HIV the finger. A finger prick test is all it takes. Get a free test at freetesting.hiv.
Go on, Marshall.
Thank you, Sam. I want to appreciate firstly Danai for his contributions. I think his everything he said was very pregnant with facts. I think he touched on the core problems of Zimbabwean football, and the core problems have been that there's lack of investment in our football clubs. Lack of investment is caused, one, by lack of trust in the football administrators, by lack of trust in the football overseers, and to some extent the regulators. So there's a death of football. There's a death of investment in football in Zimbabwe, and the investment emanates from death of investment in the football infrastructure, death of investment and order, even in the football frameworks that are there to administer football. His ideas are brilliant, but will they work in Zimbabwe? That's another issue that we have to look at, because what happens here, like the Premier League model, actually the Premier League model is that before every season, football clubs sends their accounts to the Premier League so that they check their viability status. So for you to be eligible to play in the Premier League, to be registered to play, even though you're a Premier League team, you must demonstrate that you have the capacity and capability financially to sustain the season. And the financial resources have to be legitimate and eligible, actually. So if you put that model to Zimbabwe, will it work? I think it will struggle a little bit because of the current economic environment that we have. And secondly, I personally believe that we can improve, but we have to invest a lot in the game. There's been underinvestment for a long time. And also, we have to address the misgovernance issues. There's a lot of misgovernance issues at the moment within the administrative hierarchy of the PSL, the Football Association, which I'm glad the Sports and Recreation Commission are trying to tidy up. I think from the rumors I'm hearing, government are considering to put in an investment money into some of the stadiums. And people have to also understand that most of the football stadiums we have in Zimbabwe, apart from the National Sports Stadium, most of the football stadiums that we have in Zimbabwe that are dilapidated are owned by the councils. So again, this is another issue that when we talk about infrastructure upgrading and influence, we don't mention the councils. So this is another, even if me and you, Sam, wants to go and take over Rufaro Stadium today, Harare City Council will say no. You know, they will come up with some stipulated conditions. So all this, the red tape and everything, we really need to look at it and untie it. And then my last point is going to be focused, again, that people must also understand that as a country, from a football perspective, we are going through change. And change is sometimes painful. What do I mean? I actually mean that we are going through a process where we are having new clubs like the main cities of Zimbabwe coming in. So we have I've been following the Northern Region Division 1. There are a lot of well-resourced clubs that are there that are going to come, perhaps maybe get promotion in the Premier League, that their culture is good. Go on Twitter and watch a club owned by my fellow good colleagues called Golden Eagles, which is owned by Mike Madoda and Barry Manandi. Good infrastructure. They're applying professionalism in. All the players have got contracts. They bring in sponsors to sponsor the players if they cannot afford it. Everything is well structured. What they say is what the players get. But then the problem now we have is that we have the traditional football clubs, which is this is the biggest issue we have. The traditional football clubs are Highlanders, Cape United, and Dynamos. So the problem you are going to have also is that even if me and you, Sam, start a new football club that is professional or sponsored by Coca-Cola or Pepsi, is in the Premier League. If people don't go to the stadium to watch the football, then it's going to be a struggle. So it takes us back again to, I think Dana mentioned a very good thing. We need to work on how do we get the fans back in the stadiums. Obviously, reason number one, we have to improve the stadium infrastructure so that it's bearable for kids and families to go back into the stadiums. That's problem number one. Problem number two, we have to work on the mindset of the new generation. To sell, the PSL needs to do, this is where the marketing Kelvin was talking about needs to come in. PSL needs to do road shows. They need to sell their brand, like what the Premier League do here. The Premier League have done very well in selling football, not only here in the UK, but in selling it globally. So these are issues, but unfortunately, these problems are not going to go overnight. And I know people are passionate in coming up with criticisms, but they're not going to go overnight. And then lastly, Sam, I just want to say this. I think there's a misconception when it comes to football academies. I want to tell people that presently in Zimbabwe, we have very good football academies, bar infrastructure challenges. Most of these football academies are run by private people that have the capacity and resources to run them. So the issue of going on to say we need football academies, that is not an issue currently because we have a lot of football academies in all four corners of the country. But the problem we have...
Is the issue not about regulation though?
No, regulation is number two. But the problem we have is that people need to also understand the current frameworks that are there. The issue of these football academies being run by private people is actually good for the game. Football is competitive, it's now a business. If you look at SC's Youth Sports Academy, in the last 5 years, they've exported players into European leagues. So they're actually thriving as a business. They are trying. Forget about the Zimbabwe Premier League not being exciting. They are producing players, sending them to Europe directly for trials in South Africa, and their players are successful. Kama Billiard is one of their players, and they have a lot of other players that have excelled. They've done well. If you look, there's another academy I think in Kuazana that is run by Musque, which produced Tinoka Dewere, and then there's another academy that produced Marshall Menez, who's playing in France. So the issue of saying we don't have grassroots football academies in Zimbabwe is not accurate, actually. I think what we don't have Premier League clubs owning academies. But that's not an issue because the academies are there, but then we need to develop the main game so that it becomes attractive. And this is the dilemma we have as custodians of the game, us that support the game and that are in administration in the third sector. We all need to come with ideas. I actually think in Zimbabwe, we need a football conference where all the key stakeholders will come in, government, the PSL, the football key stakeholders, and people share, cross-pollinate ideas and actually come with a model that works, paying attention to our economy and the cultural shift. Don't underestimate the cultural shift. The cultural shift. The millenniums have detached, because of social media, the millenniums have detached themselves from local football. They are focusing mainly on Premier League. They talk and eat Premier League football. That's a problem. If I'm on the group, the Chelsea fan club group, you'll be surprised to go there. People actually pay subscriptions of about £5 a month, and actually more than 700 people pay those subscriptions. So imagine if that investment, which is going to Chelsea Football Club, would go to Dynamos or Cape United, it will save. So these are the ideas that I was saying as well. That Zimbabwe. I'm not dissing the Chelsea fan club, but I'm just explaining to you how organized they are for Chelsea. They raised the £5,000 that Chelsea wanted to register them and give a platinum fee. So you can imagine.
Yes.
So these are the clear problems that we are facing, Sam. Unfortunately, we are running out of time now. But again, let me also thank and appreciate Mark, who's commenting, and all the.
Yes, Mark. Actually, on Mark, I think we need to have Mark on the show next week. Mark has got a boxing tournament that's happening in Zimbabwe next. If I'm on the 26th, I'm not mistaken. Masha, you must know about that, right?
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, so I think we should have him next week, isn't it?
Also. Yeah, no,
yeah.
We'll have Mark if it's possible.
We have Mark and talk about the basket, about the boxing. Sorry, but this Zimbabwean football issue, we couldn't even go to the Cat Zuma issue because we've run out of time. But a lot of passion comes into this topic, and a lot of people got a lot to say about it. And I think next week, let's just continue from where we leave off today. We continue with that maybe the first half of the show, and then touch the other issues as well next week. But it's been great. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I'm sorry for the video feed that came in late in the second hour of the show, but thank you for everyone who's listened in both on audio and on video feed as well. Marshall Gore, the CEO of Team Zimbabwe, who are partnering with Terrence Higgins Trust to bring this show for the whole of February. So every Sunday in February, we're going to be here talking football. And Kelvin Sfilani, CEO of the teams, of the Sunday Soul Convention. Gentlemen, I thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who contributed to the show, everyone who phoned in, all the messages. Jom Tupo, I'm leaving the show with this message from Jom Tupo as well. But Mark, thank you for texting in. Let's catch up next week. We talk about the boxing tournament in Zimbabwe. Everyone else, Lester, Danai, Timothy, Munya, Elaine, everyone else who's texted in. Thank you so much. Marshall, any last words?
The last words I have are that we should never lose hope in adversity. We should never lose hope in the challenges that we are currently facing. The only way to get on top of the mountain is to continue to focus, and step by step, we can work together to improve the condition of football and sports entirely in Zimbabwe. I know people like to criticize a lot, but I think criticizing alone will not get us anywhere. So like what Danai said, we need the involvement of the diaspora to take interest. Yes, we can invest in football clubs in Zimbabwe, and we can also support the administrators to strengthen the infrastructure so that everything can be managed very well and be credible to attract the investment, which Kelvin said it needs to come back to football. But capital also follows order. When there's no order, capital doesn't come. When there's no transparency, capital doesn't come. So we need to be very conscious of these things and to keep on putting pressure on the current people that are running football to say they need to sanitize the football and improve the condition and make them conducive. But what we must also do is to look outside the box. The focus mainly has been on national breweries and the other companies. I think there are other new players that have come into Zimbabwe. We saw Dynamos and Highlanders getting a sponsorship tune of almost, I think, 3 million each from Sakunda. So again, this is important. That money is important to flow into the game. And my encouragement also is that this is my last point. Sorry, Sam, for going on. If you notice quite well here also, people that have money here invest into football clubs. Because why? Because they can afford to do it. Even if they make a loss, but they can still afford to do it, the Roman Abramovich and the other local investors that are here. So what we also need is to create a culture of saying the who in Zimbabwe, the elite that have the money, should also invest in the sport. Kelvin, if you remember quite well, in his big days, Thomas Mafumo owned a football club, and he was managing it quite well. We had Musindo, who owned fire batteries when he was doing well as a business person. We had the guys that came and owned Blackpool. So we need also those big players, to be involved in football. The big brand names. We need to get Stride Masiwa into Zimbabwean football. They've done it right in in Tanzania now, where they have the 4 big clubs being sponsored by the 4 billionaires in the country. You can imagine if that is to happen into Zimbabwe, it will bring back the excitement. When money is there, there's peace. And when money is there, there's love. So that's all I can say.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you very much. Girls, any last words?
No,
we're back next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same time. And apologies, today we started late because it was International Radio Day. So our schedule was moved because of that. So that's why we had to start at 5 o'clock. But next week, I think we can be back at the usual time, God willing. So thank you all. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Marshall. Thank you, Kels. And we'll be back again next week, same time on Pamtengo Radio. We'll leave you with the last message from our sponsors. Remember, Terrence Higgins Trust, it's a National HIV Testing Week. Go to www.tht.org.uk for more information. You can get a testing kit from home if you want. You can get free condoms if you want. Come to the studio if you're in and around Luton. We've got free condoms and testing kits around. But if you're anywhere else in the UK, go to www.tht.org.uk and you get more details from there. We'll leave you with the last word from our sponsors. Thank you so much.
Did you know some people live with HIV for years without showing any symptoms? It's National HIV Testing Week, a perfect time to have a test. If you have HIV, finding out means you can start treatment and stay healthy. Test negative, you get peace of mind. Testing is easy, free, and confidential. You can even test at home. Give HIV the finger. A finger prick test is all it takes. Get a free test at freetesting.hiv. Did you know some people live with HIV for years without showing any symptoms? It's National HIV Testing Week, a perfect time to have a test. If you have HIV, finding out means you can start treatment and stay healthy. Test negative, you get peace of mind. Testing is easy, free, and confidential. You can even test at home. Give HIV the finger. A finger prick test is all it takes. Get a free test at freetesting.hiv.